So we had an argument, Rav and Shmuel, in the case of Menaseh. What is Menaseh? Is Menaseh the act of libations? Or is Menaseh, he took Yain Nesach, he took wine that was used for libations, which is Isur Anoah, and he intermingled into kosher wine. So Shmuel says, Menaseh cannot mean the act of libation. Of course, that's Kimlin Rabnine. The moment he lifts the wine, he's liable for the death penalty. So therefore, even Mazid, even if he does it deliberately, there can't be a financial liability. Therefore, Menasech must mean he added Nesach, he intermingled Nesach to kosher wine. Somebody asked the question. The fact is, it really says Medama. The Mishnah says that if you take Truma and add it to Chulin, you do it deliberately, you're a damager, right? So the case is redundant. So Shmuel says, Knosahu u'mifnos li'alpinon. When we speak about penalty, a penalty could be something specific to that particular case. So when you add Truma to Chulin, there they penalize you. But maybe when you add Nesach to Chulin, although you're a damager, it's not identically the same case. So maybe you deal with that differently. So maybe they're not going to penalize you. So therefore, it's not considered redundant. It could be different. Why would it be different? I'll give you an example. Give you an example. Two examples. The Gemara says a chulin that any mitzvah sheman schor betzido, bezdin are not kofin oleo. Okay? The Gemara says a chulin that a person says, I'm not putting on tefillin. Makanos hashitzi nafsho. Bezdin would beat him. So there's a question, Machlokes Rishon, does it mean up to the point of dying, or does it mean even to beat him to death if he's not willing to put on tefillin? First it says, I'm not making a sukkah. What about if you have mitzvah shema and schor b'tzivah Torah? When it states the mitzvah, it speaks about a person doesn't honor his parents. The Torah says, if you honor your parents, you will merit longevity. Shluch hakan, you merit longevity. Torah, it's matan schor b'tzido. As the mitzvah said, the Torah mentions the degree of reward. In that case, Bezin will not compel the person physically, force the person to do it. Why? Because the Torah said it, and if you don't want to do it, you're forfeiting the right. In that case, the court won't do it.
They don't have
No,
power.
they won't.
Sorry?
They won't.
They just won't because it's precluded by what the Torah said.
Right? Yeah, whatever they are, it's the Gemara Chulin. Okay? So any mitzvah, they don't do. So now, there's a halacha that we say, Einon Shemin Adin. What do we say, Einon Shemin Adin? The Torah says, it's a Mishnah in Sanhedrin, it says, Lo Yitain Nizaru L'Molech. Molech was type of idolatry. They would pass the child between a row of fires, and it was a rule for idolatry. So it says, Lo Yitain Nizaru L'Molech. If you give of your children, you're liable for the death penalty. But if, let's say, you have one child, and it's not of his children, of his progeny, it's all his progeny, you're not liable for the death penalty. So the question is, but why? But it's Kal V'chomer. If you give of your children, you're liable for the death penalty. So if you give all your children, definitely should be liable for the death penalty. Einon Shemin Adin. We don't apply the Kal V'chomer principle when it comes to punishment. So over there, the Marsha cites a Bahag, which Rishon explains what is the concept of punishment. Atonement. Kapara. So for instance, if a person violates Shabbos inadvertently, one brings a chatos. If you do it deliberately, even where you're not forewarned, there's no chatos. Why not? Because since you did it deliberately, you don't get away. Korban will not atone. A korban is not sufficient to rehabilitate the failing. Shogeg, where there wasn't the intent, korban is sufficient with tshuva. Deliberate, it's not enough. So the Bahag says, if punishment is kapara, is rehabilitation, if it's of your children, it's still atonable. If you give all your children, you have to work that out with God. Death is not sufficient to correct, to rehabilitate that wrong that you've done.
still children left. He gave other children.
No, of your children,
She
but it
still
gave
has
all.
Torah.
It's like unforgivable to the point, even if you die, it's not enough. Hashem has to work it out with you. That's the bahag. That's the rationale of Inil Shemin Adin. So when I deal with kapara, I can't apply the principle of kal v'chomer. It has nothing to do with the logic, because you have to understand the reality of the wrong that you have done. It's not sufficient.
Kal V'chomer is telling you that it's worse than.
No, you can't use it.
You can't use the principle kal v'chomer. You can't use the principle kal v'chomer. Because at a lesser level, it's effective. At a,
Because it's a Kal V'chomer,
Right.
the Chomer is too much. It tells you that that's.
no, it's
looking
nothing. It's not applicable
It's not
because it's not
applicable.
sufficient.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, right? That's to understand. Now, with Chazal, they penalize a person. What's the penalty? Because he did something wrong. So they evaluated with it. They said this is an appropriate penalty. When you do something else, if it's not identical, it may not be appropriate, an appropriate penalty. So therefore, the Mishnah has to say, not only if you take truma and you intermingle it with chulin, where you're minimizing its value, but it's still potable, you didn't reduce it to nothing, but yayin nesach, because you could say, yayin nesach, you did something which is so extreme, you know something? You work it out with God. We're not getting involved here. On a Torah level, hezek shenika lo shmei hezek. You know something? If that's the case, you work it out with God.
They both penalties of truma and
They're both penalties. Mazid, yes.
So now we have to make a differentiation.
No, so that's why the Mishnah has to tell us. Even though it's more severe, we still penalize you. We don't say, no, now it's up to God. God will work it out with you. That's therefore one case of knas, you can't learn from another case of
Even
knas.
though the Nessa is more severe, you're saying
Doesn't make a difference.
it doesn't matter.
It could be a similar rationale as we're talking about Shemin Adin.
Right, but I'm still confused. Why isn't the Kame and the Nessa equal if they're both?
I was taking Yain Nesach. It's something, it's unconscionable what you did. When it comes to unconscionable, on a Torah level, there is no liability.
There's
We-
no liability.
Right? Because hezek sheni lo shmei hezek. Because it has to be a physical damage. Right? It's halachic damage.
Right.
So maybe if you do something which is less conscionable, right? Well, then we're going to work it out for you. You'll be able to redeem your soul. You do something nesach, you know something? We're not going to redeem your soul. You got to work that out with God. On that, the Mishnah says no. Even there, you're able to redeem your soul by compensating the person who you damaged.
So, Rabbi, are we saying that when it comes to damages, kal v'chomer doesn't work? Is that what we're
No.
saying is a broad principle?
The penalties, specifically penalties. Penalties. Don't business penalty. Penalties are
judgments.
It's a rabbinical evaluation. Do we penalize them? Don't we penalize them?
But kal v'chomer doesn't work.
Well, that's what Shmuel is saying.
Kal v'chomer won't.
Kal v'chomer cannot be applied.
Okay. So, on that question, kal v'chomer is a very powerful, logical principle, and Rabbi Ishmael is 113.
Everybody agrees. Everybody
agrees with us.
But the question is, where is its application?
So, the Chazal look at this example that you just cited in the Torah, and they extend it in a very broad way. That what you did was so problematic that you've got to work it out with God yourself. Okay,
I'm saying that's the rationale why penalty cannot.
But why wouldn't we make the kal v'chomer is in fact punishment or judgments, except where the Torah specifically says. But what's done is where the Torah says something, otherwise we've extended
Wait a
it in
second.
a very broad
Wait
way.
a second. Eino Shim Dadin is not just a concept we've come up with ourselves. We have a model case, and we draw from that to apply it elsewhere. That is the model case of Eino Shim Adin. Of your children, not all your children. But if kal v'chomer is a principle that we elucidate the Torah with this, interpret the Torah, so why not, even if it's your only child?
Because the Torah says, so I would say maybe the Torah said that as an exception. And
But we have,
we've had
no,
principles
but no,
where
that's only if the Torah repeats something twice. If it's a principle, the Torah shouldn't have to repeat it. That it's repeated indicates it's an exception. It's an exception rule, but it says it once. That is the rule. That is the rule to draw from that to apply to elsewhere.
So it's
to other.
not repeated here.
It's not repeated.
So then we treat it as not as an exception.
Not as an exception. Exactly.
There's another rule that applies.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So this is the machlokes. According to Rav is of the opinion that knas, we do draw knas from knas. If we're going to penalize you in regard to truma, we're going to penalize you in regard to that. Rav. Because Rav learns menasich is when you actually did the act of libation. You did the act of libation. Right? Correct? But it's interesting. Okay? I'll tell you, Rav can also learn knos miknos lo yalpino. Right? You know, but wait. If you learn that normally the word menasich means libation, right? Steve, sit back. Steve, you sit back. If menasich normally means libation, but Shmuel can't learn it means libation because kim leim jamine, right? So he's forced to say it means taking nesach and intermingling into kosher wine. But then we have a problem. But it says medaba. If you're already liable, if you take truma, so you have the kal v'chomer. So Shmuel has to respond, knas from knas we don't learn. Right? Each case is unique unto itself. Maybe they penalize in one situation, not the other. But according to Rav, Rav can concur, knos from knos lo yalpino. But what is the meaning of the word menasech? Libations. Once you have libations, so we don't say kim leim jabime, but it says in the Mishnah. So either the Chiddush of Mishnah is that you don't say Kim Leim Drabminei, or the Chiddush is that also, why don't you say Kim Leim Drabminei? Because the act of becoming a thief precedes the act of death penalty. Right? So lifting up, you can't be a thief. Now, so therefore you already have the financial liability. So therefore now, but still, but it says a chain of nikr. So again, what does the Mishnah have to tell me that? We read tell me Medaba. So Rav could, in that context, Rav could also. So it's not clear what it is. Rav could say, either the Mishnah tell me a Chiddush in Kim Lev Drabminei, to tell me not as Shmuel. Shmuel says when you lift it, that's the beginning of the act. It carries the death penalty. But that's requisite. We see it as a separate act, that's the act of stealing. We already have the financial. It's just telling me that. It's telling me that. The Mishnah is telling me not, shouldn't understand the Mishnah like Shmuel. That's the Chiddush of the Mishnah. According to you can say no. That is not Kim Leim Drabminei. I know from elsewhere. That's like eating the chaylev. Right, the Gemara says that you pick up chaylev, if you hold Kim Leim Drabminei by koresh, you pick up chaylev, and you put it in your mouth, you're liable for stealing. Because when you lifted it, you stole, and when you ate it, you destroyed it. Because because putting it in your mouth, lifting it is not a prerequisite to eating. Because if you bend down, you eat it off the floor, then you didn't do an act of stealing. You didn't do a separate act. So the lifting is not a prerequisite to what? To eating. So you could eat it in a way where everything happens simultaneously. So the act of lifting is unrelated to the act of swallowing, of ingesting it. Right?
Is this a case of Mammon, so is it possible like Shmuel, or is this not a case? How do we view this
See, upon so many other things. Let me understand. Have a look at Kim Leim Drabminei. So, I mean, a ramification is momo, but the basis.
It's part of the story, but it's not. It's really
Right.
ramification.
Okay. So more ask. According to the opinion that you learn knas from knas, what do we need all the cases? The Mishnah should have just said, right? Hamatame. Person takes a sheretz, puts it to truma, you have liability. Why? It's a penalty. So what does that have, all the other cases that follow?
There's two.
Just one. Say one
One
case.
case.
Hamatamics. I know. Medama, Nasich. Every one of those cases, we penalize you. If you learn, you draw penalty from penalty. So all the cases are totally redundant. So why does the Mishnah have to articulate in each one of these applications?
Menasech and Medama.
And Medama? Medama and Menasech.
Right.
Right? So much as Tzricha, you need each one of the cases. Why? The Tana Metame, if I only say Metame, you take a sheretz, put it on a Kohen's Truma. So not a question, we had a question. To what did he apply the sheretz? Was it Truma? Or was it Chulin? And it's a person who eats Chulin al Taras Kodesh. And we discussed this yesterday. There were Jews in Israel that even Chulin, they would only eat it only if it maintained the ultimate level of purity, that it was not contaminated, although there's no Torah violation. It was a fence. Somewhere says, eat Truma, if the case of a Tami is that he took a sheretz and applied it, put it to Truma, having Yushim to come absent, or Lagami, you know, we penalize him because he took something of value and he reduced it to nothing. He totally caused a total loss. Just want to make a point on this. The halacha is that if Truma becomes Tamei, Truma Tamei, what do you do with it? You have to, but the Kohen is permitted to use it as fuel. You can benefit from what? So it wasn't Mafsid Lagabri, right? It still has fuel value. No, sir, that's it. That's the answer. Something that its value is edible. The moment you contaminate it, it becomes inedible. For all intents and purposes, you've destroyed it. Because now it's a new level of classification. Okay? So I'd say we've taken it from fully edible to non-edible. That's what we penalize you. But let's say I learned the case from Tami is he took chulin, which is eaten al Taras HaKodesh. So even if it becomes contaminated, what a person who normally eats chulin Taras, what does he eat when he's tummy? He's tummy. Of course, chulin becomes tummy also. He touches it, right? So he hasn't reduced it to a nil level. Because you're not permitted to take chulin and cause it to become contaminated. So, of course, that fence has great value. Why do people eat chulin al Taras HaKodesh in Eretz Yisrael? Because if we maintain ourselves at that level, even for something not consecrated, so something consecrated, definitely a person will not come to eat it in a contaminated state. So because he crossed the line, that's where we penalize it. So therefore, so it's something very specific to that.
It's a negative commandment, correct?
No. Chulin you could be metallic. Chulin you could. It's a fence.
What? Truma.
No. Saying. No, but the question, what is the Mishnah? When it says metame, that we penalize if he does it deliberately. Is it truma? If it's truma, it's understood why we penalize it.
First case is true.
No, but we can learn the first case is not truma. That's what the Gemara is saying. The first case may be chulin.
Okay.
So there's no, it has been reduced to zero. Even if you don't eat it, a third party will eat it. Right? There is, it's marketable still. The answer is because you're not permitted to cause tumah for chulin in Eretz Yisrael. Because this fence is a very important fence.
Even though people still eat it.
Right?
Truma
People,
they can't eat.
Truma they can't eat.
Right.
Avo medama imolo. But when you take truma and intermingle with chulin, what did you do? You just limited the market. Until now, all Jews could drink the truma, drink the wine. Now, only kohanim. Okay, you know something? Not so terrible. So maybe we're not going to penalize him.
I thought that's a negative. To take function.
No, you mixed it into chulin. He didn't diminish the truma. No suffix. Now the chulin. No, the meduma is for the Yisrael. Meduma means not suffix. It means it's intermingled.
This was fit for a Kohen.
No. The chulin was fit for every Jew. Now that he added truma, now it's only limited. The clientele that are only kohanim. So what did he do? He diminished the value of the chulin. Right? So therefore, maybe we're not going to penalize it. The Ashmin and Medama, Bishum the Shchiach. If it only that case, because that's not unusual. Right? Person has Kohanim coming as guests. So you have to take Truma, you add it to chulin. It's not the end of the world. And there's no issue of Metame, Lo Shchiach. To contaminate Truma or to contaminate chulin, it's something which is not usual. So for an unusual case, we say Milslo Shchil goes Rabbanan. Something which is remote. So since it borders on the remote, maybe we're not going to penalize it. Emalo. V'yashmin metame umedama. So let's say two cases. Say metame, which is borders on remote, and medama, where you've actually reduced its value. Because there, the principle accumulating drabine has no application, right? That's what we penalize.
In which case?
Metame and medama.
Right. Well,
So therefore, if you do it deliberately, you pay. Avo menasech, but menasech, if menasech means libation, and you understand libation as Shmuel understands libation, correct? What does that mean? The death penalty starts with the lifting. Again, so even if you do it deliberately, there's no financial liability. Correct? Because Kim and Rabbi said, if the Mishnah has to tell me, according to Rab, we don't say Kim and Rabbi. Because the lifting is not a prerequisite to the libation. Right? There should, even if you do it deliberately, there should be no financial liability. So therefore, the Mishnah is someone like Rabbi Yirmiyah says that the lifting, when you're lifting, you're either a thief, and the subsequent act, that's what brings the death penalty. So the same action, and what for stealing and for idolatry are two separate actions. Okay?
So what the Rav is saying is Rav could still hold like Rabbi Yirmiyah.
No, the Gemara did say Rav was like Rabbi Yirmiyah.
Oh, it does.
The Gemara says that earlier. Rav was like Rabbi Yirmiyah. Therefore, he learns the case of Menaseh is speaking where he actually did the act of libation, right? So he actually poured it for idolatry, and when he lifted it, the lifting at that moment he wasn't yet liable for the death penalty.
So what's the difference?
What?
What's the difference between Rav and Shmuel? They both hold like
No, Shmuel doesn't hold like Rabbi Yirmiyah. Shmuel does not hold like Rabbi Yirmiyah. So if you don't hold like Rabbi Yirmiyah, the only way you can learn the case of Menasech is he took Yet Nesech and he intermingled into kosher wine.
Right.
But Rab was like Rabbi Yirmiyah, he learns Menasech means Menasech. He did the act of libation because he became a thief first, and the subsequent act caused brought about the death penalty.
If we just said Hamatame, then we would be able to. So we can include that when the rabbin would apply.
But Tommy's not Kim Rami, but Tommy.
Right. So I'm saying if it just said Hamatame,
Or Medama, also not. Medama is Chum and Techulin. Right? Ulahad Tony Avua, Rabovin. He says, what Avua Rabovin had said, V'rishore omim hamatame v'nasich. Originally, they only said that if you do something deliberately, you pay. That's only if you contaminate and if you menasich. Chozlom afa medama. Kolhani lomalik. Yeah. Originally, he said metami and menasich, but medama not. So what do we need all the cases? Stricho. The Ashmina metame. If I only have metame by itself, you should look even in drabine. Right? Because it's not kim in drabine. You took truma and you contaminated chulin, you contaminated, right? Or truma. Right? So that I say, why do we penalize you there and you pay? Because there's no kim al menasech. So if it just had metame, menasech, I'd say maybe not. Al menasech kim in drabine emalo. V'yashmin menasech. And if I'd have not mishum to come mafsid le legamri, why do we penalize him? Because he took something of value and he reduced it to what? To zero. He doesn't cause a full loss. Metame emalo. Well, if it's chulin, it's not. Shum also, it still has a value of fuel. Fuel value.
Yeah, but still it's not. We just said it's not an animal.
That's only food. We learned it before. Because it's a tremendous loss. Even though it may have fuel value, but you created a tremendous loss. Ava medama, the hefsid muru, emalo. But medama, which is a slight loss, emalo, tzricha. Therefore, you need all the cases. Okay? Until now, we've been speaking that on a Torah level, even if you do it deliberately, there is no liability for being a damager. Because hezek shein nika lo shmei hezek. When the Torah speaks of being a damager, it has to be physical damage. Halachic damage is not called a damage. That it's been affected negatively because of the halacha, that's not called, you're not considered a damager.
So, I'm sorry, but Ramezit Chaya,
Yeah, rabbinically, it's a penalty. That's a penalty.
that's a penalty even though,
Penalty means on a Torah level, there's no liability. You know, it's interesting. I mean, Gemara says in a number of locations, Moda Kanas Potter. Right? The Torah says if you steal and you're caught with a stolen item, not only do you have to return the item, you have to pay double. You have to pay its value. It's called kefil. What's kefil? Kefil is kanas. It's a penalty. It's not restitution because you're returning the item. That because you didn't return the item, therefore we penalize you. You have to pay double value. The item plus its value. Okay. What happens if a person comes to Beis Din after he steals and he admits, he says to the court, I stole. And then witnesses come say he stole that item. One doesn't pay the knas. Because that's called modin knas potter. If you admit that you did the wrong, you can pay the penalty. Why? Because it says asher yashir elokim. It's only if you're found guilty by the court. But if you self-incriminate, the court can't convict you. Okay? The court has to be the one to incriminate him. If he incriminates himself, they cannot. Okay? Now, what's the rationale? Until let's say somebody steals from another person, and the victim seizes the value of the item, and he destroyed the item. And the one who was victimized, he goes and seizes the value. Is it a valid seizure? It is. Why? Because the moment he destroyed his item, there was a financial liability. I'm taking what I have a right to take it. What about if a person goes and seizes the penalty, the kefil? Somebody stole from him, and he goes and seizes principal plus kefil. Do we force him to give it back? He has to give it back. Why? Because until the court rules, when it says Asher Yashin Okim, the court creates the obligation of penalty. So therefore, until they ruled that you're the thief, the obligation is not in place. So therefore, you have no right to seize the knas, the penalty. Only the principal you have the right to seize.
the court ruled it also.
What?
If the court ruled for the penalty, can he go take it?
No. Once the court ruled, then it's financial.
So the guy can go get it.
Then he could seize it if he doesn't pay it. But before the verdict, he can't. He's not able to seize it because the obligation doesn't exist. Okay. That's for the court to rule on it. Correct. Give such a verdict. Sanhedrin, Daf Yomi. Okay. Amar Chizkiah. Chizkiah argues. So until now we've been of the opinion hezek shein nikas lo shmei hezek. That unless it's a physical damage, it's not classified on Torah level as a damager. Amar Chizkiah dvar Torah echad shogig v'echad mezid chayov. Whether you cause damage to a person inadvertently, deliberately, even in the context of where it's not a physical damage, has been diminished physically, you're liable. My time law, hezek shein nikas shmei hezek. Because a damage, although it's not visually noticeable, or it cannot physically, there hasn't been any negative effect, shmei hezek, it's considered damage. So now the question is, we say odmud lo'olam. A person has full liability, even shogig. So why do we say shogig? Because he's absolved. Umatam omru shogig potur kadeshi odeo. Because let's say a person inadvertently contaminates somebody else's truma. You know something? If you're not going to absolve him, he's not telling the damagee that he contaminated his truma. So what's going to be? The Kohen's going to be truma in a contaminated state. So he's going to be eating yisur, right? He's not permitted. So to encourage the person who caused the damage inadvertently to inform the damagee, we absolve him from financial payment. No, there's machlokas. No, that's the machlokas. It's machlokas Amoroim, how to understand the Mishnah. Is hezek shinnik shmei hezek or lo shmei hezek? Chizki says it's shmei hezek. So we have the obvious question. So why shogi do we absolve you?
So he said, rabbinically, they come in and
Right? They absolve you rabbinically because otherwise the person has enough reason not to say a word.
And maybe they wouldn't have
You know what this reminds you? Person's in the parking lot, and he goes and he's not careful. That's the car right next to his car. Drives off, doesn't say a word. Doesn't he have a problem? What he doesn't know is not going to hurt him. Come back, okay, so we'll have a little aggravation.
What do we do
Doesn't
about,
say a word.
What do we do about Mezid, Rabbi?
Wait, the Gemara's next question. Ihochi afilu mezid nami. So if that's the case, when he does it deliberately, also, let's say a person deliberately contaminates somebody else's truma.
Give the same.
So if he doesn't say anything, the Kohen doesn't know what happened. The Kohen's going to eat the truma. So again, he's going to be eating Yisr.